My university lost my records. Then they found them attached to someone else's name. The woman behind the glass partition at the registrar's office had that particular expression, civil servant's master, after years of dealing with confused 20-somethings. Patient, slightly condescending, completely unmoved by my rising panic. I'm sorry, Mr. Brennan, but according to our system, you never graduated from Lakewood State University. She turned her monitor toward me, and I saw my student ID number connected to a name I didn't recognize. Jeremy Dalton. This is who completed your degree requirements in May 2023. I've been standing in line for 20 minutes, resume in hand, trying to get an official transcript for a job offer that would change my life. Senior financial analyst at Bridgeport Capital, $85,000 starting salary. The background check required degree verification, and I'd requested my transcript 3 weeks ago through the online portal. When nothing arrived, I'd driven 4 hours back to campus. Now this stranger was telling me I never graduated, that the 4 years I'd spent in lectures and labs and late-night study sessions had somehow been erased and transferred to someone named Jeremy Dalton. That's impossible, I said, keeping my voice level despite the cold spreading through my chest. I walked across that stage. I have my diploma on my wall. My parents were there. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos. Me in cap and gown, shaking Dean Foster's hand, my mother crying, my little sister making rabbit ears behind my head. The woman barely glanced at the screen. I understand this is frustrating, but physical diplomas aren't proof of completion. Our digital records are the official documentation, and they show that Jeremy Dalton, using your student identification number, fulfilled all requirements for a Bachelor of Science in Finance. She said it like she was reading from a script, like this happened every day. My hands started shaking as I scrolled through my phone for more evidence. Bank statements showing tuition payments, housing receipts from the dorms, a photo of my student ID card with my face and my name. Look, this is me, Daniel Brennan, student ID 847295516. How can someone else have my number? The woman's expression shifted slightly. Not sympathy exactly, but maybe recognition that this was more complicated than a clerical error. I'll need to escalate this to my supervisor. Can you wait here? She disappeared through a door behind the counter, and I stood there in the empty waiting area, staring at the monitor she'd left turned toward me. Jeremy Dalton's graduation photo stared back. Different face, different person. But my student ID number, underneath. I'd graduated 14 months ago, spent a year working as a junior analyst at a small firm in Chicago, and finally landed an interview with Bridgeport after 3 rounds of networking and preparation. The offer letter had arrived 6 days ago, background check initiated 5 days ago, and now, with my start date 3 weeks away, I was being told my degree didn't exist. I pulled up the email from Bridgeport's HR department. Please provide official transcripts showing degree completion by November 15th. Failure to provide documentation will result in offer withdrawal. Today was November 9th. The supervisor, who emerged 20 minutes later, was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a Lakewood State lanyard. Mr. Brennan, I'm Angela Reeves, assistant registrar. I've reviewed your file, and I need to be honest with you. This situation is extremely unusual. She gestured toward a small office off the main lobby. Let's talk privately. Inside, she pulled up multiple screens showing my academic history. Freshman year looked normal. Fall 2019, spring 2020, my courses, my grades. Summer 2020, nothing unusual. Then fall 2020, something changed. See here? Starting your sophomore year, we have 2 sets of activity under your student ID, your class enrollments and grade submissions. But also financial aid applications, scholarship claims, and housing deposits that don't match your actual attendance pattern. What does that mean? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer was going to be worse than a simple clerical error. Angela pulled up a spreadsheet showing financial transactions. Someone was using your student identification to claim federal loans and institutional grants, full Pell Grant eligibility, state need-based aid, work-study wages, but the funds were being dispersed to different bank accounts than the ones you'd registered with student accounts. She highlighted a series of deposits totaling over $43,000 across 3 years. This money went somewhere else, to someone else, and somehow, the degree completion got tangled up in the fraud. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of her desk. Are you telling me someone stole my identity to get financial aid? Angela nodded slowly. That's what it looks like. And when they completed their coursework using your credentials, the system registered their graduation under your ID number. Your actual transcript got overwritten isn't the right word. Replaced. The digital records show Jeremy Dalton earned your degree. She pulled up another screen showing course enrollments I'd never made. Advanced Corporate Finance, International Tax Policy, Investment Banking Seminar. Did you take any of these classes? I shook my head. I was in the Quantitative Finance track. These are all corporate track courses. Jeremy Dalton was in the corporate track, Angela said quietly. He graduated with a 3.7 GPA, full honors. And according to our system, he did it using your student ID number, while somehow you were also attending classes and earning grades under that same number simultaneously. She closed the laptop and looked at me directly. Mr. Brennan, this isn't just an administrative error. This is systematic fraud, federal financial aid fraud, identity theft, possibly involving someone with access to our registration system, because this level of manipulation can't happen externally. Someone inside the university did this. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 30 minutes afterward, trying to process what I'd learned. Angela had given me printouts of the duplicate records and contact information for the university's general counsel. "You need a lawyer," she'd said. "And you probably need to contact the Department of Education's Office of Inspector General. This is federal student aid fraud." She'd also pulled personnel records showing who had access to modify student accounts during my enrollment period. 7 people in the registrar's office, 3 in financial aid, 2 in the dean's office. 12 potential suspects who could have orchestrated this. One of them had stolen my identity, funneled tens of thousands in financial aid to someone else, and erased my academic record in the process. The job offer from Bridgeport felt like it was slipping away with every passing hour. I called their HR department and got voicemail. Left a message trying to explain without sounding insane. "This is Daniel Brennan. There's been an issue with my transcript request. The university is investigating what appears to be a records error. I'm working to resolve it and will have documentation as soon as possible." I sounded desperate even to myself. I called my parents next. My father, a retired accountant who'd worked in audit his entire career, listened to the whole story without interrupting. Then he said, "You need to file a police report immediately. Tonight. And you need to freeze your credit if you haven't already. If someone had access to your student ID and personal information, they might have used it for more than just financial aid." I drove straight to the campus police station, a small brick building on the edge of campus near the athletic complex. The officer who took my report was maybe 25, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and seemed completely unprepared for what I was describing. "So you're saying someone else graduated using your login?" I tried to explain it again. "My student identification number. It's how the university tracks everything. Enrollment, grades, financial aid, degree completion. Someone got access to my ID number and used it to claim financial aid while I was enrolled. Then they completed their own coursework under my credentials, and now the system shows they graduated instead of me." The officer typed with 2 fingers, painfully slow. "And you have proof you actually went to school here?" I showed him everything. Photos from graduation, my physical diploma, bank statements showing tuition payments, housing records, emails from professors. He printed the report and handed me a case number. But I could tell from his expression he thought this was a civil matter, not a crime. "You'll probably need to work this out with the university administration. Records disputes aren't really something we investigate." I left feeling more frustrated than when I'd arrived. My father's voice in my head. "Paper trail. Document everything. Dates, times, names, conversations. If this goes legal, you'll need evidence." I started a spreadsheet that night, logging every interaction, every document, every piece of evidence I could gather. The next morning, I called Lakewood State's general counsel office and got transferred 4 times before reaching someone who would talk to me. Nathan Carver, Associate Counsel, Corporate Compliance Division. He had the practiced neutrality of someone trained to limit liability. "Mr. Brennan, Angela Reeves forwarded me your case information. I want to assure you that the university takes allegations of fraud very seriously. However, before we can take any formal action, we need to complete our own internal investigation." I asked how long that would take. "These matters typically require 4 to 6 weeks for a thorough review." I had 6 days before the Bridgeport background check deadline. "I need my transcript now," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "I have a job offer contingent on degree verification, and the deadline is in 6 days. Can't you just look at my course records and see that I completed the requirements?" Nathan's sigh came through clearly over the phone. "The issue is that your course records are contradictory. We have 2 complete sets of coursework under your student ID. Your actual classes and grades, and Jeremy Dalton's classes and grades. Until we determine which records are legitimate and which are fraudulent, we can't issue official documentation. Issuing a false transcript would expose the university to significant liability." He paused. "I understand your frustration, but we have to follow procedure." I called Bridgeport's HR department again and finally reached a human. Melissa Tran, Talent Acquisition Coordinator. I explained the situation as clearly as I could without sounding like I was making excuses. "There's been a serious issue with my university records. Identity fraud involving my student account. The university is investigating, but it's going to take longer than the November 15th deadline to resolve. Is there any way to extend the background check timeline?" Melissa's tone was sympathetic, but firm. "I'm sorry, Daniel. The background check deadline is company policy, not flexible. If we can't verify your educational credentials by the 15th, we'll have to withdraw the offer. But if you can resolve it after that date and reapply, we'd be happy to reconsider you for future positions." Future positions. Like this opportunity wasn't already the culmination of months of applications and interviews and hoping. Like I could just wait around for another chance while my degree apparently didn't exist. I hung up and immediately called every lawyer I could find who specialized in education law and fraud cases. Most were too expensive or too busy. Finally, I found someone who would at least meet with me for a consultation. Rebecca Lang, a solo practitioner who'd handled several cases involving university disputes. "Bring all your documentation," she said, "and be prepared to move fast. If you want that job, we need to force the university's hand." Rebecca's office was in a converted house near downtown, cramped and overfilled with filing cabinets and case law books. She spent an hour reviewing my evidence, the duplicate records Angela had printed, the campus police report, my physical diploma, bank statements showing tuition payments, photos, emails. She made notes in a yellow legal pad, occasionally stopping to pull up information on her laptop. Finally, she leaned back and looked at me over her reading glasses. "This is bad, really bad. Not for you necessarily, but for the university. This is systematic fraud that required internal access. Someone in administration stole your identity and used it to funnel financial aid to another student or to themselves. We're talking federal crimes, wire fraud, identity theft, misappropriation of federal funds. The university is exposed to massive liability here." "Can you make them fix my records?" I asked. Rebecca smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. "Better than that. I can scare them into fixing your records. University General Counsel are terrified of two things: negative press and federal investigations. Right now, they're trying to handle this quietly, internally on their timeline. We're going to make it loud and urgent." She pulled out a draft demand letter and started typing. "We're going to send this to the university president, the general counsel, the board of trustees, and the Department of Education's Office of Inspector General. We're going to demand immediate restoration of your correct academic records, a complete forensic audit of how this fraud occurred, and we're going to threaten a federal lawsuit if they don't comply within 72 hours. The letter went out by email and certified mail on November 10th. Subject line: formal demand regarding identity theft and federal financial aid fraud at Lakewood State University. Rebecca had crafted it beautifully, citing specific federal statutes, documenting the timeline of fraud, and making clear that the university's attempt to slow-walk the investigation was unacceptable. Mr. Brennan's career and financial future are being irreparably harmed by the university's negligence in protecting his student records, and by their refusal to take immediate corrective action. Every day that passes without resolution constitutes ongoing harm. We demand immediate restoration of correct academic records and official transcripts by November 13th, or we will pursue all available legal remedies, including federal litigation and public disclosure." The response came faster than I expected, not from Nathan Carver, but from the university president's office directly. Dr. Lawrence Finch, who I'd only ever seen at graduation and in promotional emails, personally called me on November 11th. His voice had that smooth, administrative quality that comes from years of fundraising and donor management. "Mr. Brennan, I want to apologize personally for what you're experiencing. This is completely unacceptable, and I've ordered an expedited investigation with daily updates to my office. I understand you have an urgent employment deadline. Can you give me 48 hours? I'm pulling in our external auditors and our IT security team to trace how this happened." I wanted to believe him, but Rebecca had warned me. Universities apologize when they're scared. Don't accept promises. Demand action. "Dr. Finch, I appreciate your concern, but I need my correct transcript by November 13th. That's not negotiable." There was a pause, then he said something I didn't expect. "I'm going to authorize emergency issuance of your transcript based on your actual course completion records, pending the outcome of the full investigation. You'll have it by end of business tomorrow. But Mr. Brennan, I need you to understand that this situation is much bigger than a simple clerical error. What we're uncovering suggests organized fraud that may have affected multiple students. We're going to need your cooperation as we investigate." I agreed, felt a rush of relief, and then immediately felt suspicious. Why the sudden cooperation? What had they found that made them move so fast? The transcript arrived in my email at 4:47 p.m. on November 12th. Official letterhead, registrar's signature, sealed PDF with security encryption. Bachelor of Science in Finance, graduated May 2023, GPA 342, all courses listed correctly. I forwarded it to Bridgeport's HR department within minutes, then called Melissa Tran to confirm receipt. "Got it," she said. "I'll send this to our verification team. Assuming it checks out, you're cleared for your December 2nd start date." I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt angry. Angry that I'd had to hire a lawyer and threaten a lawsuit to get documentation of something I'd legitimately earned. Angry that someone had stolen my identity and nearly destroyed my career before it started. Angry that the university had tried to slow-roll the investigation until I forced their hand. Rebecca called the next morning. "The university wants to meet. All parties. Their general counsel, external auditors, campus police chief, and someone from their IT security department. They've found something, and they want to brief you before they contact federal authorities." The meeting was scheduled for November 15th at the university's legal office. A suite of rooms in the administration building I'd walked past hundreds of times as a student without ever going inside. When I arrived with Rebecca, we were shown into a conference room where 6 people waited. Nathan Carver, Dr. Finch, a woman introduced as Kendra Okoye from the external audit firm Deloitte, the campus police chief Raymond Tucker, an IT security specialist named David Yu, and Angela Reeves from the registrar's office. Dr. Finch started with another apology. then turned the meeting over to Kendra Okoye. She had the bearing of someone used to delivering bad news to powerful people. Mr. Brennan, our forensic audit has uncovered systematic fraud spanning 5 years, affecting at least 43 students, involving approximately $1.2 million in diverted financial aid funds. The scheme was perpetrated by Laura Simmons, who served as Senior Financial Aid Officer from 2018 to 2024. She resigned in August, shortly before our annual compliance audit was scheduled to begin. Kendra clicked through a PowerPoint presentation showing bank records, altered student accounts, false loan applications. Ms. Simmons had administrative access to both financial aid systems and registrar databases. She identified students from middle-income families who received partial financial aid, but not full Pell Grants. Students like you, Mr. Brennan, who wouldn't be monitoring their aid package as carefully as someone depending on it for full tuition coverage. David Yu, the IT security specialist, took over. She would create shadow accounts using real student ID numbers, but altered personal information. Different bank accounts, different mailing addresses, different phone numbers. She'd apply for maximum federal aid using these shadow accounts, approve the applications herself, and disperse the funds to accounts she controlled. The students whose IDs she'd stolen had no idea this was happening because they were receiving their own legitimate aid separately. The system showed 2 sets of aid under one ID number, but she'd flagged her fraudulent records as sealed for privacy reasons, so they didn't appear in standard reports. He pulled up my own shadow account. My student ID connected to a P.O. box in a different city, a bank account at an institution I'd never used, a phone number I didn't recognize. How did Jeremy Dalton end up with my degree? I asked, the question that had been consuming me since this started. Angela Reeves answered, looking uncomfortable. Jeremy Dalton is Laura Simmons' son. He attended Lakewood State from 2019 to 2023, same years as you. He was legitimately enrolled and completed his coursework. But his mother never filed his financial aid applications under his own name because she was diverting those funds elsewhere. Instead, she enrolled him using partial scholarships and small institutional grants that didn't require federal verification. When he graduated, she processed his degree completion through your student ID number, essentially giving him your academic record to cover the fact that his own official records were incomplete. She erased your degree and replaced it with his to hide her fraud. The room was silent for a moment. Then Raymond Tucker, the campus police chief, spoke up. We've been coordinating with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Federal student aid fraud is a federal offense. We executed a search warrant on Ms. Simmons' residence yesterday, found extensive documentation of the scheme, including the list of all 43 students she'd victimized, bank statements showing the flow of diverted funds, and correspondence with her son indicating he knew his degree was processed fraudulently. He slid a folder across the table. These are copies of the criminal complaint. Laura Simmons was arrested this morning. Jeremy Dalton is being charged as an accessory. You'll likely be contacted by the U.S. Attorney's Office to provide a victim statement. I sat there trying to process it all. 43 students, $1.2 million. A woman in a trusted position systematically stealing from students for 5 years. Her son graduating using my identity because she'd stolen his financial aid money along with everyone else's. What about the other students? I asked. The other 42 people she did this to? Do they know? Dr. Finch nodded. We're in the process of notifying them now. Many were from your graduating class and the 2 years prior. Some have already experienced similar issues with background checks and employment verification. Others didn't know anything was wrong because they weren't in situations that required transcript verification. But all of them had their identities compromised, and all of them are entitled to credit monitoring and legal support from the university. Rebecca asked the question I should have thought of. What's the university doing to compensate these students for the harm caused by your security failures? Nathan Carver, the general counsel, shifted uncomfortably. We're prepared to offer a settlement package that includes full credit monitoring for 10 years, compensation for any documented financial losses resulting from the fraud, such as lost employment opportunities or legal fees, and coverage for any psychological counseling related to the identity theft. We're also implementing comprehensive security reforms to ensure this never happens again. But I need to be clear that accepting the settlement requires signing a release preventing litigation against the university. Rebecca smiled her lawyer smile. We'll need to see the specific terms before Mr. Brennan makes any decisions about a settlement. The meeting ended with more apologies from Dr. Finch and assurances that the university would cooperate fully with the federal investigation. Walking out of that building, I felt a strange combination of vindication and exhaustion. The truth was out. The person responsible was in custody. My degree was officially restored. But none of it changed the fact that I'd spent 2 weeks in absolute panic, nearly lost a career-defining job opportunity, and discovered that an institution I'd trusted had failed to protect its students so completely that organized fraud went undetected for 5 years. Rebecca drove me back to her office to discuss the settlement offer when it came through. Don't sign anything quickly, she advised. Let me review it carefully. Universities lowball on these things, and you've suffered real harm, lost time, emotional distress, attorney's fees. You're entitled to fair compensation. The settlement offer arrived by email 4 days later. $25,000, 10 years of credit monitoring through Experian, and reimbursement of my legal fees up to $5,000. Rebecca's assessment: insulting. You nearly lost an $85,000 job. You had to hire a lawyer and fight for documentation you'd legitimately earned. You've been exposed to identity theft that could have ramifications for years. I'd counter at $75,000 minimum, with unlimited credit monitoring and full legal fee reimbursement. We sent the counteroffer that afternoon. The university came back at $40,000. We settled at $57,000. Lifetime credit monitoring, full legal fee coverage, and a written apology from the Board of Trustees. I signed the settlement agreement on November 28th, 3 days before my start date at Bridgeport Capital. The U.S. Attorney's Office contacted me in early December. Assistant U.S. Attorney Philip Grant, White Collar Crime Division. He was building the case against Laura Simmons and wanted detailed victim statements from as many of the 43 students as possible. I spent 3 hours in his office going through everything: the timeline, the discovery process, the duplicate records, the impact on my employment. Philip told me Simmons was facing 15 federal charges including wire fraud, identity theft, theft of government funds, and conspiracy. Her son Jeremy faced lesser charges as an accessory. She cooperated during interrogation, Philip said. Gave us a full accounting of the scheme. Claimed she started small, just a few $1,000s to cover her son's tuition because she made too much for need-based aid. Then it escalated. More students, more money, more elaborate cover-ups. By the end, she was living well beyond her salary. New car, vacation home, luxury purchases, classic fraud trajectory. The trial was scheduled for March, but it never made it that far. Laura Simmons accepted a plea agreement in February, guilty on all counts in exchange for a recommended sentence of 8 years in federal prison and full restitution to all 43 victims. Her son Jeremy pled guilty to conspiracy and received 2 years probation, community service, and permanent expulsion from Lakewood State. His degree was formally revoked, which meant the degree that had replaced mine in the system never should have existed in the first place. The plea hearing was brief. I sat in the gallery with about a dozen other victims, watched Laura Simmons stand before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, looking nothing like the smiling professional whose photo still appeared on old university staff directories. She made a brief statement. I'm deeply sorry for the harm I've caused. I betrayed the trust of students and their families. I abused my position for personal gain. I accept full responsibility for my actions. The judge wasn't moved. Ms. Simmons, you held a position of trust at an educational institution. Students and their families relied on you to help them access funds for education, one of the most important investments a person can make. Instead, you stole from them. You compromised their futures. You exposed them to identity theft and fraud. The harm you've caused extends far beyond the dollar amount you stole. Some of these young people nearly lost job opportunities. Others have damaged credit. All of them will spend years recovering from what you did. She sentenced Simmons to the full 8 years recommended in the plea agreement, with no possibility of early release. Ordered full restitution, plus 20% interest, mandatory financial counseling, and a lifetime ban from working in financial aid or student services. The gallery was silent as Simmons was led away. It felt like justice, but it also felt hollow. She'd go to prison, serve her time, get out. We'd all spend years cleaning up the mess she'd left behind. I started at Bridgeport Capital on December 2nd as scheduled. The background check cleared without issue once the correct transcript was verified. My new colleagues had no idea what I'd been through in the weeks before starting. I didn't tell them. What would I say? That my university gave my degree to someone else? That I'd nearly lost this opportunity because of someone else's fraud? It felt like the kind of story that would make people doubt you even when you were telling the truth. So I kept quiet, did my work, and tried to move forward. But some nights I'd pull up the news articles about the case. Former university employee sentenced in $1.2 million fraud scheme. Student ID theft ring uncovered at State University. Dozens of students affected by financial aid fraud. My name never appeared in the coverage. Just victims and students and affected individuals. The settlement money from Lakewood State arrived in January, deposited into my account in one lump sum. $57,000. I paid Rebecca's fees, paid off my car loan, and put the rest into savings. It felt like compensation, but also like hush money. The university never publicly acknowledged the scale of the security failures that had allowed Simmons to operate undetected for 5 years. They never explained how someone in the registrar's office didn't notice duplicate records or how financial aid officers didn't flag the suspicious patterns. They implemented new security protocols and hired external auditors for annual reviews, but the message was clear. They wanted this to go away quietly. And for the most part, it did. The story made regional news for a few weeks, then faded. Students graduated, new classes enrolled, and life at Lakewood State continued as if nothing had happened. The other victims reached out occasionally. We'd formed an informal group chat after the trial, 43 people who'd shared the experience of having their identities stolen by someone who was supposed to help them. Some had lost job opportunities like me. Others had discovered unauthorized credit cards or loans in their names. A few had been rejected from graduate schools because their transcripts showed irregular patterns that took months to explain. We shared stories, vented frustrations, and compared notes on credit monitoring alerts and identity theft recovery. It helped to know I wasn't alone, that the panic and anger and sense of violation I'd felt was normal and shared. We talked about filing a class action lawsuit against the university for negligence, but ultimately decided against it. We'd signed settlement agreements. We were tired of fighting. We wanted to move on. I got a promotion at Bridgeport in June, 8 months after starting. Senior financial analyst to portfolio manager. My boss told me I'd shown exceptional attention to detail and analytical rigor. I didn't tell him that nearly losing my degree before I'd even started the job had given me a particular appreciation for documentation and verification, that I triple-checked everything now, kept meticulous records, and never took institutional competence for granted. The fraud had changed me in ways that were hard to articulate, made me cynical about systems and institutions, made me aware of how fragile everything was, how easily your life could be derailed by someone else's corruption or negligence. But it also made me careful and thorough and unwilling to accept things at face value. In finance, those aren't bad qualities to have. 3 years after it all happened, I got an email from Lakewood State's Alumni Association. Generic mass mailing about homecoming events and donation campaigns. The email signature included the new president's name, someone who'd taken over after Dr. Finch retired the year before. I deleted it without reading past the first paragraph. I'd never donate to that university, never attend alumni events, never wear their merchandise or speak fondly of my time there. They'd taken my degree, erased my record, and forced me to fight for documentation of something I'd legitimately earned. The settlement money and apology letter didn't change that. Some things can't be fixed with compensation. Some trust, once broken, stays broken forever. But I still have my diploma, the physical one I'd received at graduation. It's framed on my office wall at Bridgeport, right next to my CFA certification, and the photo of me shaking hands with the CEO when I made portfolio manager. Sometimes new colleagues ask about it. Lakewood State? Where's that? I tell them it's a state university a few hours away, that I graduated in 2023, that it was a fine education. I don't tell them about Jeremy Dalton or Laura Simmons, or the 43 stolen identities, or the 2 weeks I spent thinking my degree had vanished into administrative limbo. I don't tell them I had to threaten a federal lawsuit to get a transcript. Those stories stay private, shared only with people who understand. With Rebecca, who still emails occasionally to check in. With the other 42 victims in our group chat, who get it without explanation. With my parents, who watched me fight through it and never doubted me. Last month, I got a notification from my credit monitoring service. Someone had tried to open a credit card in my name using old information from my university days. The application was automatically denied because of the security freezes I'd put in place after the fraud was discovered. I filed a report with the Federal Trade Commission, updated my fraud alerts, and moved on with my day. It's routine now. Part of life after identity theft. You never fully recover. You just get better at managing the ongoing exposure, at catching the attempts before they succeed. At living with the knowledge that your information is out there somewhere, being traded or sold or attempted to be used by people you'll never meet. The last I heard, Laura Simmons was serving her sentence at a federal correctional facility in Pennsylvania. Scheduled for release in 2031, when she'll be 63 years old. Her son, Jeremy, moved out of state after his probation ended, changed his name legally, and disappeared from public records. Some of the other victims tried to find him online, wanted to confront him or at least know where he ended up. I never bothered. Knowing wouldn't change anything. Wouldn't give me back the 2 weeks of panic or erase the sense of violation that comes with having someone steal your identity. Justice was served in the legal sense. Simmons went to prison, we got settlements, the fraud was exposed and stopped. But some damages can't be compensated. Some experiences leave marks that don't fade with time or money or punishment. I still check my student account login at Lakewood State occasionally. Morbid curiosity about whether the records are still correct. My name appears properly now. Daniel Brennan, graduated May 2023, Bachelor of Science in Finance. No mention of Jeremy Dalton or duplicate records or the administrative nightmare that nearly destroyed my career before it started. The system was cleaned up, corrected, secured, but I remember what it looked like before. Remember seeing that stranger's name connected to my student ID number. Remember the cold panic of being told I never graduated. Remember having to prove my own existence, my own education, my own legitimate accomplishment, because someone in a position of trust decided to steal and lie and cover their tracks by erasing me. That's the thing about identity theft that people don't understand until it happens to them. It's not just about the money or the fraudulent accounts. It's about having someone take your name, your information, your legitimate achievements, and use them for their own purposes. It's about discovering that systems you trusted had failed so completely that someone could operate a criminal enterprise for 5 years without detection. It's about fighting for recognition of something you'd earned, proving you exist to institutions that should already know you. It's about learning that your identity, your record, your degree, your life isn't as secure as you thought. That it can be erased and replaced and stolen, and you might not even know until the damage is done. So when people ask me about my university experience, I keep it simple. Lakewood State, finance degree, good program. I don't tell them what happened after graduation. Don't explain that my degree temporarily belonged to someone else. Don't mention that I learned more about fraud and identity theft and institutional failure in 2 weeks of fighting for my transcript than I did in 4 years of classes. Some stories are too complicated to explain, too dark to share casually, too personal to turn into anecdotes. This is one of them. My degree is real. My record is correct. My career is thriving. But I'll never forget the woman at the registrar's office turning her monitor toward me and showing me a stranger's name where mine should have been. That moment when everything I'd worked for seemed to evaporate into administrative chaos. That feeling of being erased. Some things stay with you forever, even after justice is served and settlements are paid and life moves on. Jeremy Dalton graduated with my degree because his mother stole my identity to cover her crimes. Laura Simmons is in prison because she got caught. The university paid settlements to 43 victims and moved on, and I stand in my office at Bridgeport Capital, looking at the diploma on my wall, remembering the fight it took to prove that piece of paper was mine. That's the story they don't tell you when you walk across the stage at graduation. That sometimes earning the degree is the easy part. Sometimes proving you earned it becomes the real test. And sometimes the institutions you trust fail so completely that you spend years rebuilding what should have never been broken in the first place. But I did rebuild. Fought for my record, got my transcript, started my career. And now, 3 years later, I finally feel like my degree is truly mine. Not because a piece of paper says so, but because I had to fight for every word on it. Because I refused to let someone else's fraud define my future. Because I learned that justice is slow and imperfect, but sometimes, eventually, it arrives. And that has to be enough. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.